Ingles.fm, Real English Conversations, Series 2. Podcast 9. London. Londres. Este podcast contiene una conversación real y sin guión entre dos hablantes nativos de inglés, Mark y Tom. Oirás primero la conversación y a continuación una clase de inglés con explicaciones en español. Cada podcast viene con un workbook detallado que puedes descargar desde nuestra página web ingles.fm. Incluye una transcripción completa de la conversación, listas de vocabulario, notas culturales y la clase. Recuerda que los miembros de nuestra lista de distribución reciben gratis transcripciones extra de nuestros podcasts, además de muchas otras cosas gratis. Así que no olvides apuntarte al consultar la página. ¡Buena suerte!
Good afternoon, my name's Tom and I'm sitting here with Mark. Hello Mark.
Hi Tom.
We're back in Turo Park in Barcelona and there are two children letting off fireworks in the park. So if there's a big bang, that's what it is, so please try and ignore it. Today we're going to talk all about London.
Good old London.
Yes, our favourite city in the world, or perhaps not. Anyway, what do we know about London?
We know quite a lot. I was born there and lived there for a large number of years. I won't say how many. And I believe you spent 12 or 13 years living in London yourself.
12 years, yes. I went there to London University and I spent 12 years there, 4 or 5 as a student, and then I worked there for 6 or 7 years. So we know a lot about London, but we both left. So, can you tell us a little bit about the history of London and maybe some stats and facts?
It's a very, very old city, going back nearly 2,000 years. It was founded in AD 43 as a Roman settlement and comprised the city of London and the city of Westminster after that. So more or less it's two cities in one, which may help to explain why it's such a big place today.
Yeah, before it became the City of London and City of Westminster, it was actually known as Londinium. That's what the Romans called it, but when they left it actually got destroyed and then rebuilt again. But yes, the original settlement was a Roman settlement. Now, Greater London has a population of 8.2 million, but the whole metropolitan area is 12 to 14 million, which makes it the 9th largest city in the world. And it's actually one of two main financial centres in the world, along with New York.
Yeah, London Stock Exchange is very famous.
Yeah, and I used to do their website. I think you might know that from Series 1. Anyway, along with Tokyo, it's one of the 3 kind of command centres for the world economy. Now, what are a couple of notable things that happened in London's history, notable events?
In 1665 to 66 there was the Great Plague, the Black Death, which
the Black Death I found out was actually the 1300s. That was a different Great Plague. So this one's called the Bubonic Plague.
And then the year after, another disaster for the population was the Great Fire of London.
Yeah, when 70,000 people had their homes destroyed when the population was only 80,000 people. So the whole of London burnt to the ground.
Which is rumoured to be not a bad thing, which may sound crazy, but because of the fire and the extent of the damage, we're not sure if it's fact, but the theory is that all of the rats carrying the plague died in the fire. So it helped to bring about an early end to the plague.
Yeah. Anyway, nowadays, London is a multi-ethnic city and it's home to people speaking over 300 languages. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That's because you did the research too.
And because I've lived there, so I can imagine that 300 is an enormous amount, but the diversity in London is also huge. There are people from more or less any country in the world you could name. There are communities living in London.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the cultural side and the diversity in a minute. I just want to talk about a couple more random facts. There are 5 airports in London. Heathrow Airport is the busiest in the world, and the UK airspace is also the busiest in the world. which can be annoying because you hear aeroplanes all the time. The London Underground, also known as
The Tube,
is the oldest metro in the world, which was built in 1863, and it has 400 kilometres of track.
which makes it still the second largest metro system in the world after the Shanghai Metro.
Yeah, an Angel Tube Station has Western Europe's longest escalator with 318 steps. Anyway, it's a very long escalator. So going a bit more, going back to the culture and sightseeing, it's become known as the multicultural capital of the world in some circles, London. 40% of London's population is foreign born, which is slightly more than New York's, and both capitals are constantly fighting over the title of multicultural capital of the world. New York has 36% of its population foreign born, and all the areas in London are very culturally mixed, aren't they? You know, you can literally walk around the corner and you'll be in an Indian area, and then you'll be in an African area, and then you'll be in a Caribbean area, and so on.
Yes, it's not segregated like some major cities where you'd have, for example, a Chinatown, you'd have Little Italy, for example, in New York. Everything is a lot more condensed and together.
Yeah. And what about the language there? Recently there's been talk of this new kind of language. I mean, before the local language in London was known as Cockney. Well, it still is known as Cockney. And now it's being taken over by multicultural London English, which is also known as Jafaican, which is a combination of Jamaican and African. And it's basically, yeah, a mixture of African, Jamaican, Trinidad and Tobago and Indian languages. Accents, sorry, not languages.
So it's more of a language spoken on the street every day.
Yeah, and
by people rather than you wouldn't use this language at work, for example.
Yeah, it's kind of slangs and dialects, and I mean, you can get on buses in London and not understand the word people are saying to you sometimes, even though it's basically English. But it might be English with a very strong Jamaican accent, or yeah, unintelligible to the English. To the native English, sorry. Anyway, what are some of the main attractions in London, Mark, for tourists?
There are many, many famous monuments, for example, so people like sightseeing when they are on holiday in London. There's a huge variety, from the buildings of the Houses of Parliament, St Paul's Cathedral, the London Eye tourist attraction, Tower Bridge, to name but few, but there are many more.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 12 years there and I've only seen about half of the tourist attractions, so you need a long time. There's plenty to do in London. The London Eye is one that I actually want to visit. It's a huge Ferris wheel. It's the largest in Europe, and it was the largest in the world until recently. And it's the most popular paid attraction in the UK. And it has about 10,000 people a day, and it's a giant wheel with views all over London. It's highly recommended. You can book that online, apparently, and not queue up. So if you're going to London, get your ticket for the London Eye. What about fashion? There's a lot of fashion. London's famous for fashion. A lot of fashion designers come out of London. Yeah. What are some of the famous ones?
Vivienne Westwood, Bruce Oldfield,
Paul Smith, Alexander McQueen, Jasper Conran. And this London first became famous for fashion in the 1960s, when it became known as Swinging London, and the 60s were called the Swinging 60s. And Carnaby Street at that point was a very famous area because it was the centre, the epicentre of sort of mod and hippie subcultures, wasn't it?
Yeah, lots of little shops selling outrageous clothes. There's famous photographs of the punks and the mods, rockers, all concentrated in this area.
Yeah, and what about restaurants? London's fantastic for restaurants, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less, if you want to eat cuisine from any country in the world, you will be able to find that food somewhere in London. There's a huge number of restaurants and a huge variety.
Yeah, I really, really miss that about London sometimes. I've lived abroad for 7 years now, and everywhere I've lived, including Sydney and Barcelona, you know, which are great metropolitan areas, they just do not have anywhere nearly the diversity of the restaurants in London. You can walk, you know, for 10 minutes in any direction and you can eat food from 10 different countries probably.
Yeah, it's a fantastic choice.
And London has more Michelin rated restaurants than in any city in the world except for Paris. So there's also very high quality cuisine there too.
That's when we start getting into very expensive food, but generally, if you want to eat for a reasonable amount of money, it's possible in a majority of places.
Yeah, and let's talk a bit about actually living there, the cost of living, talking about expensive restaurants. What is the cost of living in London? You know, how does it compare to the rest of the world?
It is one of the most expensive cities.
But yeah, I thought it was the most expensive in Europe, but I did a bit of research, and actually Geneva, Zurich and Copenhagen are more expensive, and they take into account everything for that, you know, from taxes to everything. But it's 17th most expensive city in the world, and Barcelona is 49th, Madrid 52nd, so it gives you a sense of, compared to Spain, of the expense. And so what does it kind of cost for things like rent and food and eating out?
Rent, for example, if you were going to rent a one-bedroom flat in London, relatively central but not in the tourist or business centre, you'd be looking at about £800, so maybe 1,000, 1,100 euros per month. But that would be exclusive of bills and other payments you need to make, for example, council tax,
Yeah.
which covers things like people collecting the rubbish, people maintaining the streets, things like that. That's about another £100 a month.
And what about eating out? Can you eat out like we can in Spain for, you know, cheaply for 10 euros or $12?
Yeah, it's not as common, but it is possible to go to pubs and eat maybe a traditional English Sunday roast for £8, maybe £10.
Thai restaurants in pubs as well nowadays. You can just go into a pub and eat a £7 or £8 sort of Thai meal.
But again, you need to know where to look, because like us when we first arrived in Barcelona, if you don't know where to eat, you always find yourself on the first couple of days spending far more than you would ordinarily. The same thing happens every time you go on holiday the first night.
Yeah. And talking a bit about transport, public transport, how does it compare to the rest of the world?
Well, it's very expensive. For example, a single ticket on the metro in Barcelona, in which you can go anywhere, is a flat rate of about €1.30, €1.40. In London, to do the same, anywhere on the metro is between £4 and £7. So between
6, 7, 8 euros even, yeah.
But because the city is so large, the distance covered is much more, so you end up paying a lot more for a service that, because as we said before, is very old, often is quite unreliable, a bit dirty, but it's very extensive but expensive.
Yeah. And they introduced a congestion charge in London in 2003, where you have to pay now to enter a very large area of central London, £8, so about 10 euros, to enter during the week in peak hours, Monday to Friday during the day. And they have cameras with number plate recognition systems, and you get a fine of about, well, 100 euros, 150 euros if you don't pay it. So you have to pay to go into this area, and it's reduced the traffic congestion a lot in London, hasn't it?
Yeah, which has helped the circulation of public transport, and also people who need to work in the centre, business to business, they can move much more easily around the centre now. There are no private vehicles.
Yeah, and before we finish off by talking a bit about our personal experiences in London, just want to quickly ask you, how many surveillance cameras do you think there are in the UK?
Thousands, because I know London is the most surveilled city in the world, but I have no idea about the number of cameras.
Yeah, in 2002 there were 4.2 million CCTV cameras in the UK, and it's the most surveyed, as you said, country in the world, and there are cameras everywhere you go, so you're always being watched. It's slightly strange when you first arrive. I mean, we got used to it, but you know, you're always on camera. It's a strange experience, and probably will be for some people when they first arrive in London. Anyway, personal experiences of London. What is London to you?
London's a fantastic city where you can more or less do whatever you want to do. If you're interested in music, any type of music you will find somewhere, from rock concerts to techno clubs. If you're interested in fashion, you can find clothes that cost a ridiculous amount of money, to street fashion, to punk, everything.
The markets are fantastic as well.
Yeah,
for
like second-hand clothes. If you're interested in cinema, everything is there. Art, museums, everything is there. So anyone can go and have a good time because they will find things that interest them.
Yeah, and to be a student there, you know, I arrived as a student, really. It was absolutely fantastic. You know, I was involved in the music industry there, and it was brilliant to be in that kind of industry in London. It was, you know, it was unlimited, really, the music and fashion and so on that you can experience in London. So, highly recommended. We've chosen not to live there anymore for various reasons, which you'll find out if you listen to the rest of the series. But thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Hola, me llamo Rose y en la clase de hoy te vamos a enseñar inglés creativo. Te garantizamos que si usas alguna de estas expresiones la próxima vez que estés con una persona de habla inglesa, no solo les vas a impresionar, sino que les vas a divertir. Cockney Rhyming Slang, argot de rimas del dialecto Cockney, es un dialecto inglés especial del este de Londres. Es muy habitual en películas de gángsters ambientadas en Londres como Cerdos y Diamantes. Las construcciones de este dialecto implican sustituir una palabra normal con 2 o 3 palabras diferentes, omitiendo la palabra original de la rima. Te voy a dar un ejemplo. La frase
Apples and pears.
manzanas y peras
Pears.
rima con
Stairs.
escaleras. Con el tiempo,
Apples and pears.
ha acabado representando la palabra,
Stairs.
así que para decir
I'm going upstairs.
estoy subiendo las escaleras, omitimos la palabra que rima
Pears.
y decimos
I'm going up the apples.
estoy subiendo las manzanas. Ya sabemos que es una locura, pero se pone peor. Aquí tenéis otro ejemplo.
Dog and bone.
Perro y hueso.
Bone.
Hueso rima con
Phone.
teléfono. Así que omitimos la palabra que rima
Bone.
y usamos la palabra
Dog.
para decir teléfono.
Pass me the phone.
Pásame el teléfono se convierte en
Pass me the dog.
pásame el perro. ¿Y ahora qué crees que puede querer decir?
Britney
La
Spears.
estrella del pop. ¿Qué palabra habitual rima con
Spears.
en inglés? Si te digo,
I'll have 2 Britneys, please.
estaré pidiendo 2 cervezas.
Britney Spears. Beers.
¿Puedes ver cómo funciona? Aquí tienes unos cuantos ejemplos más.
Adam and Eve.
Adán y Eva.
Adam and Eve. Believe.
Believe significa creer.
Rose, can you Adam and Eve it? It's Christmas. Barney Rubble.
El nombre inglés de Pablo Mármol de los Picapiedra.
Barney Rubble. Trouble.
Trouble significa los problemas.
Oh no, we're in Barney. The police are here. Pork pies.
Tartas de cerdo.
Pork pies. Lies.
Lies significa mentiras.
My friend said his dad's a millionaire. He's always telling porkies.
En general, en inglés coloquial es muy normal oír a alguien decir porky o porkies en vez de mentira o mentiras. Y ahora, como ejemplo final, esto se usa mucho para referirte a tu mujer en inglés cuando estás con tus amigos en el pub. Lo sentimos, chicas.
Trouble and strife.
Problemas y dificultades.
Trouble and strife. Wife.
Tu wife es tu esposa.
Oh no, trouble's on the phone. I'd better get out of the pub and go home immediately.
Ya está. Gracias por escuchar nuestra clase de Cockney Rhyming Slang. Esperamos que te haya gustado. Y recuerda, también puedes escuchar nuestra conversación en inglés real sobre Londres, que viene con esta clase, y que contiene montones de vocabulario en nuestra web. Hasta la próxima. Chao.
Gracias por acompañarnos con este podcast de Inglés.fm. Recuerda que el webbook contiene una transcripción completa de la conversación, listas de vocabulario, notas culturales y la clase. Lo puedes descargar de forma instantánea desde Inglés.fm. Nos vemos.